So now I'm joined by Matt Kelly. He's the Chief Technology Officer here at IPC. I think this is probably about the fourth interview we've had since you joined IPC, Matt. So nice to see you, and thank you for coming in.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Trevor.
So lots happening. I mean, the technology is evolving at a faster and faster rate. The time to market's getting shorter. You know, it's going to take so many things. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with keeping up?
It's a great question, and the one added word I would include is relevance, right? I mean, how do you stay relevant? Anybody stay relevant in this fast changing world? And that's kind of what we spend a lot of time with within IPC, is making sure that we do stay relevant, and that's largely what I'm doing in solutions with our team. So.
Right. One of the part of keeping relevant, though, is being able to keep up with the pace of change and be there, because standards by themselves are a lagging business, as it were. It follows the technology rather than creates it in some ways. But you've got to be there with the pace of change that's happening at the moment to be able to jump in when it's needed.
Yeah, I agree. So, kind of putting my ex OEM hat on a little bit, I definitely agree. I mean, those types of activities are lagging, but one of the things that we've already seen a lot of improvement on is trying to close that gap. Mm-hmm. So, instead of waiting for the industry to say, hey, we need a standard, and it might take 2 to 3 years, to develop. With the rate and pace of things that are going on right now, you need to be, first of all, knowing what's going on. So be there, elbow to elbow with things that are being developed. Mm-hmm. Of course, IP is there. IP will always be there.
Yes.
But there's a lot of stuff in the supply chain that needs to be standardized, as you well know.
Yep.
And so we're positioning ourselves to be there at that point in time. So it's across the board, for technologies. A lot of packaging, semiconductor, of course, being in the news. How things are built within manufacturing facilities and the segments themselves. So it's really important. I can't agree more with you to be at that forefront, close that gap, and then digest it. What is needed for industry? What is needed for the factory? What's needed for workforce? What's needed for standards?
Right. I mean, one of the other issues, though, with the whole standards thing is you've got a lot of legacy standards that have pretty much gone out of date quite a bit. I mean, I'm thinking of things like the CPH rate for pick and place machines. I mean, they were done based on through-hole technology, which has been replaced by SMT many years ago. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of these things need updated, and that's quite a task as well.
Yeah, certainly. Not to oversimplify it, but the way that we look at it is in two categories. So it is that legacy standard that has still got a lot of importance to it. It's also in the bills of material that are being used today, so you can't pull it.
Of course.
But does it need to be updated? And so we're working on that, and that goes into committee that makes sure that the if there's incremental technology changes that are going in, that those are being added. So we're doing that. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is new technology, and so of course within our solutions group, we're working in areas that we might typically haven't worked in before, or as strongly as we are working today.
Okay. So one of the standards that you brought out recently, which has done really well in the industry, of course, is CFX. It's been created the backbone for machine-to-machine communication on the manufacturing line. But what can be done to speed up the rate of companies getting listed? There's a lot of companies that are saying that they are CFX compliant, but they're not actually listed yet. What do you do to sort of try and push them along a bit?
Sure. Well, we're doing this on a few fronts. So number one is that we learned this a little bit the hard way, is qualify what that vendor is actually doing. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, CFX, we learned, could be used as a marketing ploy, which we definitely don't want. It needs to be technically sound in its operation. Yeah. So we've been using a QPL approach, where it's that equipment is then working on an exerciser basis to pass through a certain set of checks and balances, and then can be deemed qualified as a piece of equipment. So a QPL list is making sure that what you're saying the equipment can do actually is doing. So that's one thing. The other thing is the adoption within the EMS factories. And what we've learned there is a few things. So number one is when you're talking about new equipment, like a new car, the bells and whistles are on the new cars, and so that's kind of where we started. But we also know that lines are not just, turned over. I mean, these are run into the ground in some cases, and so legacy equipment has to be enacted. So more work in that area. And lastly is where that data goes. So CFX is really the piping, right? So it's how does data flow and move. But where does it go? And what we're working on now is a stronger link into MES systems, so that that data can go into the ERP systems and MES systems,
right.
So it can actually be used, digested, and used.
That's right. Yeah, and in many cases what they're doing is they're taking it up into the ERP systems, the MES systems, and doing the heavy data crunching there and putting it back down again. So
that's right.
It's important. You recently published a joint white paper with INEMI on complex integrated systems. It was quite an extensive document, and it was quite fun reading it actually. But for the benefit of our viewers, tell us what is complex integrated systems?
Sure. It's it's not a new term. I mean, you could argue that complex integrated systems have been around forever. Just depends on what we called complex at the time.
Right.
Complex integrated systems, CIS. We are trying to make sure that that's understood as an acronym because it is getting used quite a bit. The best way that I would describe it is it's kind of a mash of a whole bunch of things happening at the same time. Right. So I'll give you an example. So if you think about the auto industry, electrification of vehicles. These cars are full of sensors. You can think of like an ADAS system or something that's detecting nearby vehicles. Okay, if you look at how those are built, those have wireless communication, optics, miniaturized types of architectures that have to be ruggedized, and I can keep going and going and going, and that's all put into a very small set of package technology as well as new componentry. So when you add all that up, that is a complex integrated system.
Very much so. But I mean, you're going down into the areas where you're working on, heterogeneous materials and chiplets and all these other new advanced technologies and materials and systems.
And this one other thing I didn't mention is and mechanical integration. There's a lot of mechanical, electromechanical things that are not really well defined necessarily in the standards world that we are also addressing as well.
Right, right. Now, I mentioned briefly to Chris earlier today that, there are a few companies that are bringing in back-end packaging capability into the factories. They're building clean rooms and things like that. But it's still not, prolific by any stretch of the imagination. But do you see as, it has been driven in that direction? In terms of the packaging? Manufacturers, yeah. Manufacturing? It's a tough question. So I guess my first answer would be the global supply chain is alive and well. One of the things that we've been very careful of in all of our work in the packaging area is we are an industry trade association. So this is not about making sure that just one region can do it and then and another can't. What we do is we make sure that we're helping the companies within those regions solve their problems. So that allows us to, and I'll be very specific. So a lot of the U.S. CHIPS activity is promoting certain things like substrate capability, because there is no substrate capability or very minimal here in the United States, right? So it allows us to work in that area. It allows us also to work with our members in Europe and work in some of the ultra HDI areas where those packages still have to integrate onto higher complexity boards, for example. In the EMS world as well, a lot of OSAT and EMS companies, they end up doing a lot of similar work. And we'll take on those types of jobs. So there's like an OSAT EMS overlap as another specific example. And then also, in Asia, where we also have membership, if there is, if there's company leadership of certain technologies, then what is needed from North America and Europe, so that they can supply that. So what it does is it allows us to act and service a global industry, but very specific to the problems in those regions. Right. You recently hired Devin Iyer as your IPC's first Chief Strategist for Advanced Packaging. What role do you expect him to play within the organization?
Yeah, well, first, I'm absolutely delighted that he's been able to join us with IPC. We're very lucky to have him. He comes to us with a very strong technical background and business background himself. He's most recently Senior Vice President at Amcor Technologies.
Yes.
And has been with Infineon and has just been, he's just very
impressive.
very well known just in his own right. Basically, what we're doing is we're spending more time in the packaging side. As I mentioned, you can either choose to be proactive or reactive, right? And
right.
we're being proactive.
Okay.
There's so much work that's in front of us that we see for advanced packaging that we brought Devin on board, just with his tremendous background. So Devin works very closely with me and our team, and is basically navigating not just the microelectronic side of things, but also the power electronic side of things.
Right.
It's really interesting how power electronics doesn't really get talked about. It's kind of been the forgotten child, if you will, and he brings a tremendous amount of expertise to that
it's a growing area, very much so.
Absolutely.
Very active area. But so can we expect to see more sort of advanced packaging standards and things like that coming out of IPC in the future?
Yes, you can. In fact, we have a few that are in the works right now. Again, they're not being built only in certain regions. We've got them being built, wherever that know-how is.
Right.
Look, to be quite frank, a lot of this technology leadership is in other regions.
Yes.
And so we're working in those regions.
Right.
So yeah, the short answer to your question is yes. We have some packaging standards now that, as you mentioned before, need to be updated. But there are certainly new ones in the works right now.
Okay. So final question, and it's around the topic of AI. I mean, it's been bandied around in every industry these days. But I mean, in the electronics field, it's going to have a significant impact in different areas. What is your view on it, and are you exploring that area?
Yeah, we are now. I mentioned all the different things that we're that's on our desk right now.
Right.
AI is one of those things where we don't have a lot of work under our belt right now. But I was just in a presentation just before this interview, and we were actually talking about that. So there's a lot of interest in that. We are seeing a lot of interest, particularly in the EMS space right now, basically for defect detection. Right. And elimination, whether it be in AOI or AXI. Those seem to be two very predominant areas. Yeah. And just with the capability of AI training, kind of utilizing the data sets in ways that your very best operators and engineers could never do. So
yeah, they seem to be getting used as virtual assists, so that they do some of the grunt work and let the operator concentrate on the more
it's not really. It's actually been around quite a bit longer than most people realize. Like before I came to IPC, we were working in the area of head and pillow detection. And proved very clearly that you could actually pick very difficult defects out using an AI tool that, again, would otherwise take CT type of X-rays and all kinds of time to find out. Now the AI, once you train these neural networks, can find very quickly, and it is very, very accurate.
Very accurate. Wonderful.
So to answer your question, this is an area where we're spending more time in 2024 and into 25.
Right. Excellent. Well, it's always exciting to catch up with you, Matt. I mean, you've got one of the fun jobs, I would say, in the industry. But thank you for coming in and talking to us again today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Trevor.